Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Finlo Costain. LEAF Marque is a leading global assurance system that verifies more sustainably farmed products and allows customers to support ecological quality at the checkout. David Webster took up the role of chief executive recently and is working to build on the legacy of Caroline Drummond, who sadly died last year. I asked him what his priorities are for the LEAF Marque.
Thanks, Finlo. Well, I suppose coming into the role, LEAF Marque has now reached 23 countries internationally, and we're looking at how do we continue to build on that growth, both in the UK and externally, particularly a very exciting partnership with Tesco. So there's a very active technical advisory committee that sits within LEAF Marque, which is focused on the standard development. And we're also looking at things such as technology and data outputs, etc., which are relevant in the context of this work as well. But obviously, I'm a bit loath to say too much on that just at the moment, on the basis that, I know it's better to go out with clear plans once they've been fully formulated, rather than sort of to speculate on what we would like to happen, but may not practically be possible in reality. But the aim is very much to continue the expansion of the application of the LEAF Marque assurance framework to as many farms, both in the UK and internationally, as we possibly can.
And David, you're building on a really quite substantial legacy, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Caroline was very well known in the farming community, and for years was one of, a relatively small number of voices, not the only voice by any means, but a relatively small number of voices really pushing very hard for the farming community to engage with environmental management as a core component of successful environmental agricultural delivery. And I think the legacy of what she's left us is hugely powerful. And I think that fundamentally it stems from a foundation of the fact that, Caroline believed that farming was an inherent good, and she believed in farmers, and she wanted farming, particularly in the UK originally, to be successful, but be successful on the basis of having engaged with the broad principles of integrated farm management, which was absolutely key to her vision. And the premise of that vision, of course, was the fact that no singular intervention which has got an environmental focus on it can work in the absence of others. So she had a lovely expression that you can't go green if you're in the red. You've got to have a successful business. You've got to be thinking about the impact of the land and the environment together constructively. And she framed these 9 principles of integrated farm management as a core component of the LEAF Marque standard, which we continue to steward today. But of course, LEAF's work is far broader than just the LEAF Marque standard. We have a huge engagement program with the general public, of which Open Farm Sunday is probably the most well-known component of that. But we do a lot of work on peer-to-peer learning between farmers as well. And actually, our education team, we employ a very large number of highly skilled educators who've come out of primary and secondary education. Those individuals are in and out of schools on a regular basis. And last year, for example, LEAF engaged with 40,000 school children on the importance of farming to the environment. So there's a huge amount more to LEAF than just the LEAF Marque.
Thinking about the inherent good that you mentioned there, the inherent good that takes place in the field, but also the good that takes place in the market, I wonder if you could tell me how it is that LEAF adds value for farmers and then also for customers.
The LEAF Marque standard is an assurance standard, which obviously the retailers and farmers can use to position the produce that comes off that farm as having been grown in an environment where issues related to environmental management and environmental stewardship have been properly considered. And there's a clear assurance trail to show that has been there. So there's an assurance side of it. But the LEAF value add is much broader than that. So the LEAF value add to the farmers is taking the farming community with us on that journey, which is critically important. It's, the reality is that how environmental management measures need to be applied into the landscape will vary considerably by the nature of the type of the farm and where it's located and what the nature of its activities are. So it's critical that farmers are helped to understand how engaging with those types of processes can make a positive difference, both for the environmental outcomes from that farm, but also more broadly to the commercial outcomes of those farms. And if you talk to some of the leading proponents of integrated farm management who work with LEAF, they will all say there is a value to their farm business from adopting the frameworks which they've gone through as part of the LEAF Marque certification, or as they've gone through the engagement processes with some of the educational frameworks that we run. And typically that will be about making the farm more resilient. We'll be reducing the cost base. So I was very privileged to be on Jake Freyson's farm in Overbury, the land he manages in Overbury very recently. And he was explaining to me quite clearly that he's using less nitrogen input on his land as a result of the cover cropping rotation that he's following. And the level of sophistication around that and the complexity of it, sharing the detail of that between one farmer to another farmer is just completely invaluable, I think, in terms of helping bring the farming community to the standard and adding value more broadly to farmers as they think about these issues.
Now, how farmers get paid is getting ever more complex. And so I wonder how you see LEAF fitting into that future of natural capital and public goods payments.
I see actually our work has been completely congruent with trying to help the farming community come into that world. I mean, and again, there's a lot of uncertainty out there at the moment. And I feel particularly for farmers in the UK who aren't clear on where their future income streams are going to come from or what that's going to look like. But I do think charities like LEAF are very, very well placed to engage with those farmers to help them understand how might they think about engaging with those processes. And again, the peer-to-peer education networks we've got sort of, I think it's 50 odd demonstration farm networks, which we can plug farmers into to see what other farmers have done, to understand what adopting these frameworks might look like on their land and how they might integrate this type of thinking into their business planning process. I think we're complementary to efforts of others to try and help bring the farming community towards that world which is emerging for us. And I would hope that LEAF, this is where LEAF is not just simply an assurance standard. We've got the assurance of LEAF Marque, but we've also got the charitable aims, which are much deeper rooted into what we stand for as an organisation and how we're trying to help bring farmers into this way of working and see that it can work for them and add value to their business overall.
I'll come to Open Farm Sunday in just a moment, but I must just ask you, Red Tractor is bringing out its Greener Farm commitment next year. Do you think that they're trying to compete with LEAF?
I personally don't perceive this as being about trying to compete with LEAF. I think there is an inevitability to the direction of travel which the agricultural community will have to go on, along with the whole of society, as we face into the need to try and decarbonise our operations. And this isn't just about LEAF and Red Tractor. This is a much broader set of conditions that are shaping that environment, not least legislation within the EU, within the United States, the requirements of the city for greater reporting, accuracy and standards. So there's an inevitability of the fact that assurance standards will start to ask more and more probing questions around supply chains and how do those supply chains operate, of which Red Tractor are very well positioned to engage with that in terms of UK farming, as indeed are LEAF. I think the point from my perspective is on this, that we just need to avoid duplication. We have to work collaboratively and we have to keep the object in mind rather than be focused on the small details of competition and who's got the control, etc., etc. I think the simple reality is that this agenda is coming. LEAF is enormously well placed to engage with it. Our job, whether we're Green Tractor or LEAF or whoever, is to help farmers understand how to engage with this type of thinking in a way that actually is value additive to their business.
And we all have a role, isn't it? It's that added value element which is so important. Farmers have got to believe that there's a financial value to actually taking part in the assurance process to want to engage with it.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with that. And I think if it's where to look for where that value add is, and if the only place one looks for where that value add is, what can I sell more once I've got this standard to me? I think that's slightly missing the point. Of course, that's part of the point in terms of how do I expand my market access. But I think we also need to be thinking about how do I increase the resilience of my farm? How do I go through the thought process about how do I take cost out here, which I may not see currently because I've not engaged fully with the frameworks. And the simple reality is farming is a tough environment to be in right now. And you're often talking to people who are managing the complexities of a small business, which is a very, very demanding small business environment. They're going to need support and help. We can't simply impose. We have to work out how do we collaborate and assist and support. And I think that we have to take a plural approach to doing that. It can't simply be we will have one standard. That's just completely naive. We have to work collaboratively. We have to work proactively together to help the farmers come to this agenda.
Now, David, you mentioned resilience there, and part of that resilience is about engagement with the public so that the public can value and understand the important work that farmers are doing. Open Farm Sunday is one of LEAF's big successes. Do you have any plans to build on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Open Farm Sunday is enormously successful, and I feel very privileged to be working now with Annabelle, who's led that program for so many years. 179,000 people went onto farms in the UK through Open Farm Sunday last year. 250 farms opened their doors. So this is a really big event. It's a really seminal event in the rural calendar. And when you talk to the farms that participate in it, it's important to them. That a lot of work goes into running these events and bringing people out and explaining what we do. And I think it's critical for many farms in terms of their license to operate, not just in terms of global policy or UK policy, but just within their local communities. Actually, some of the feedback we've had from the farmers who've gone into that event has been actually, when I'm bringing the combine down the lanes, and historically it's caused a bit of problem with my neighbours, they're much more understanding now of why we're doing it and how we're working. So I think bringing farming back into communities again is really important, just simply because the numbers of people who work in farming in rural communities has dropped so much over the past sort of 30, 40 years, and we forget. It's easy to forget that. And my recollection is of talking to Nick Rousel, a farmer who I used to work with down in Hampshire, a leaf farmer, who was saying that in 1985 his father's farm employed 42 people on 1,500 acres. Today he farms 4,000 acres and he's employing 3. So actually, the connectivity within our rural communities between farming has dropped. And these events are really important as a way of re-establishing that. Where my thinking on this now is, when I look at what LEAF can offer, our education outreach team is just superb. We've got an amazing group of teachers who work with us, who are into schools all the time. They really understand how to engage children around the value of farming. And my thinking on Open Farm Sunday is, could we do something a little bit more where we make Open Farm Sunday what I might call an apex event, a point in the calendar attached to a broader educational campaign about the value of farming and farmers to stewardship of the environment, and then encouraging kids to get out to the farms, to go to an Open Farm Sunday and really see that for themselves. And I think there's a lot more we can do around that. They already do great work, but it's a superb platform to build from, a successful platform to build from, I think.
That was David Webster from LEAF Marque. You can find more news on our website at 8.9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.